The desperate call. The Nylari homeworld hung like a wounded jewel against the void of space. Once a vibrant blue-green sphere teeming with life, now its atmosphere swirled with sickly yellow clouds. From her position in the orbital command station, First Commander Ilara Vox watched her dying world through 8 crystalline eyes that no longer shed tears. The command center hummed with the desperate activity of the last functional government installation in the Nylari system. Power fluctuations caused the ancient equipment to stutter and fail with increasing frequency. Technicians with translucent carapaces worked feverishly at their stations, their appendages clicking against control surfaces with practiced precision. "Status report," Ilara demanded, her voice carrying the harmonics of authority despite her exhaustion. Chief Science Officer Keelan approached, his usual bioluminescent patterns dimmed with fatigue. "The atmospheric degradation is accelerating, Commander. Toxicity levels in population centers have exceeded sustainable thresholds. Our remaining colonies have less than 30 rotations before total environmental collapse." Ilara's outer membrane tensed. 30 rotations. Just one standard galactic month before her entire species faced extinction. And the Council's response. Keelan's head appendages drooped. "They have declined intervention. Again." The Galactic Council, that grand assembly of the most advanced civilizations, had made their position clear. The Nylari were expendable. Their world, struck by a passing cosmic anomaly that had seeded their atmosphere with a voracious self-replicating nanoparticle swarm, was deemed beyond economical salvation. The Council had offered a limited evacuation for essential cultural preservation, a mere 5,000 individuals from a population of billions. What of our neighbors? The Vorati, the Tellurian Alliance. "All defer to Council directive," Keelan said. "None will risk sanctions by defying the quarantine order." Ilara moved to the central command platform. Her species had achieved spaceflight only 3 generations ago, a mere cosmic eye blink. The Nylari were newcomers to the galactic community, their technology primitive by Council standards. They had been welcomed with patronizing tolerance, assigned resource-poor outer territories, and expected to be grateful. "There is one option we haven't explored," said Telna, the communications specialist. Her voice was hesitant, almost fearful. Ilara turned. "Speak." "The forbidden frequencies, the ones the Council banned after discovering them." The command center fell silent. Everyone knew of whom Telna spoke. The Deathworlders. The humans. Earth was classified as a prohibited contact zone. A Class 12 death world whose inhabitants had somehow survived conditions that should have rendered complex life impossible. Extreme weather patterns, deadly tectonic instability, dangerous levels of radiation, countless apex predators, and somehow, against all odds, the humans had not merely survived. They had dominated. The Council had made first contact with Earth 80 cycles ago and immediately implemented containment protocols. Human technology lagged behind galactic standards, but their military capabilities caused grave concern. They thought in ways other species did not. Their history suggested they valued survival above all, and their psychology seemed to embrace conflict rather than avoid it. Humans were permitted limited trade, but direct communication was strictly forbidden except through Council intermediaries. Most species had never even seen a human except in restricted educational material. The Council would detect any transmission, Keelan warned. We would face immediate sanctions. Ilara's outer membranes rippled with the Nylari equivalent of bitter laughter. What sanctions matter now? Our world is dying. Our people face extinction. What worse could the Council do? She turned to Telna. "Open the channel. Use the old frequencies the exploration vessel detected. The ones the Council ordered us to forget." Telna hesitated only briefly before her appendages flew across her console. "Channel opening. But Commander, I don't know their communication protocols. Their language structures are unlike ours." Ilara stepped forward. As part of her military training, she had studied the forbidden knowledge. the history, biology, and languages of Earth. A precaution, should the Deathworlders ever break containment. This is Commander Ilara Vox of the Nylari Unified Government. Our world faces extinction from atmospheric nanite contamination. The Galactic Council has abandoned us. We have billions of lives at risk. Any assistance Earth can provide would be. She paused, searching for the right human concept. A mercy we would never forget. The message was sent, bouncing across subspace on frequencies that hadn't been used in decades. The command staff waited, hardly daring to breathe through their respiratory membranes. Minutes stretched into hours. Hope began to fade. Then the speakers crackled. A voice, deep and clear, speaking accented but perfectly understandable Galactic Standard. Nylari Command, this is Admiral Helena Reyes of the United Earth Defense Force. Signal received and authenticated. Stand by for response team deployment. The command center erupted in clicking sounds of disbelief and hope. Ilara herself could barely process what she was hearing. Admiral Reyes, we are grateful, but you should know the scale of our crisis. We have billions requiring evacuation, and the atmospheric contamination is. We're aware of your situation, Commander, the human interrupted. Our science division has been monitoring the spread of the nanite swarm since it first appeared in your system. We've been developing countermeasures. Ilara's appendages trembled. You've been monitoring us. How? The Council restricts all surveillance off. A sound came through the communication system. It took Ilara a moment to recognize it as human laughter. The Council's containment protocols are less effective than they believe. We've maintained observation networks throughout the galaxy since we first understood the Council's true intentions toward Earth. Before Ilara could respond, Keelan called out in alarm. Commander, multiple FTL signatures detected. Massive energy readings. The main view screen activated automatically. Spatial rifts were forming throughout the Nylari system. Dozens, then hundreds of them. From each rift emerged vessels unlike anything Ilara had seen before. Human ships, she realized. Not the elegant, streamlined vessels of the Council, but massive angular constructions that bristled with what could only be weapons systems and strange technological arrays. Nylari Command. Admiral Reyes continued. The UEDF 7th Fleet is deploying to your system. We've brought atmospheric processors, medical units, and evacuation vessels. We need your cooperation to establish ground operations immediately. Keelan's appendages were trembling as he read the sensor data. Commander, I'm counting over 300 human vessels. Their combined mass exceeds the entire Galactic Council peacekeeping fleet. Ilara struggled to find words. Admiral Reyes, we are eternally grateful. But why? Why would humans help a species you've never even met? There was a pause before the Admiral responded, her voice softer now. Because you asked, Commander. Because you're facing extinction and no one else would help. And because humans don't abandon others in need, even those we've never met. Within hours, human vessels had established orbit around the Nylari homeworld. Shuttlecraft descended to the surface, carrying strange machinery and in teams of humans in environmental suits. The first surface teams reported directly to Ilara, who had descended to coordinate efforts from the planetary capital. The human who introduced himself as Commander Jackson stood before her, remarkably calm despite being surrounded by aliens. His environmental suit was partially retracted, revealing a face with features that seemed both familiar and alien to Ilara. Humans resembled some species in the galaxy, but something about them was distinctly different. An intensity in their eyes, perhaps. The nanite swarm is aggressive, but not particularly intelligent, Jackson explained, showing Ilara holographic models. Our atmospheric processors are deploying countermeasures, specialized hunter-killer nanites designed to target and neutralize the contaminants without damaging organic life. How did you develop this technology so quickly? Ilara asked. Jackson's face formed an expression she couldn't interpret. We didn't develop it quickly, Commander. Earth has been working on these countermeasures for nearly 20 years, since our long-range sensors first detected the cosmic anomaly that seeded your atmosphere. But why prepare defenses for a species you've never contacted? The human's expression shifted again. Earth learned long ago that preparation is survival. We develop countermeasures for every threat we identify, whether it affects us directly or not. As the human teams deployed their technology, reports began coming in from across the planet. The yellow clouds were receding. Atmospheric readings showed rapid reduction in toxicity. What the Galactic Council had deemed impossible, the humans were accomplishing in days. But trouble was brewing. Galactic Council vessels had been detected entering the system, a delegation led by High Counselor Drex himself. The communication came as expected. Drex's stern face filled the screen in Ilara's temporary headquarters, his expression one of practiced diplomatic concern masking obvious anger. "Commander Vox, you have violated Council Directive 5523 by contacting a prohibited civilization. Furthermore, you have allowed restricted technology into a protected system. These actions cannot." A human hand reached into the visual field, and Admiral Reyes stepped into view beside Ilara. "High Counselor Drex," the Admiral interrupted. "This is Admiral Helena Reyes of Earth. The Nylari contacted us under emergency protocols when the Council abandoned them to die. Earth responded as we would to any humanitarian crisis." Drex's composure faltered momentarily. "Admiral Reyes, Earth is not permitted to deploy military forces outside your assigned sector. You will withdraw immediately and—" "This is not a military deployment, Counselor," Reyes cut in smoothly. "This is a rescue operation. And as for permissions, Earth signed no treaty restricting our movements. The trade agreements your council imposed on us specifically excluded military limitations, as your negotiators believed our technology too primitive to matter." Drex's features hardened. "Admiral, the Council will not tolerate." "The Council," Reyes said, her voice suddenly cold as space itself, "left billions to die when you had the means to save them. Earth will not stand by while sentient beings face extinction. Not now, not ever." She leaned closer to the screen. "Your vessels are welcome to observe our humanitarian efforts, Counselor, but any interference will be considered an act of aggression against both Earth and the Nylari people. I trust that's clear." The communication ended abruptly. Ilara turned to the human admiral, a mixture of gratitude and fear coursing through her system. "The Council controls thousands of worlds, Admiral. They could bring overwhelming force." Admiral Reyes smiled, but there was something in her expression that sent a primal shiver through Ilara's nervous system. "They could try, Commander. But there's something the Galactic Council has never understood about humans. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived predators, disasters, disease, and our own worst instincts. And in doing so, we learned something the Council species forgot long ago." "What's that?" Ilara asked. "How to fight when everything is at stake. The Council species have lived in engineered peace for so long they've forgotten what it means to face extinction and survive anyway. Humans never forgot." As if to punctuate her words, another wave of human vessels emerged from FTL rifts at the edge of the system. The rescue operation continued, and with each passing day, hope grew stronger on the Nylari homeworld. The human response. The Nylari atmospheric crisis had begun to stabilize by the time the Galactic Council reinforcements arrived. A fleet of elegant vessels took position at the system's edge, maintaining distance from the human ships that now orbited the healing planet. Inside the newly established Joint Command Center on the Nylari homeworld, First Commander Ilara Vox studied the tactical display with growing concern. Her species was gradually recovering. Human atmospheric processors had reduced contamination by 60% in just 2 weeks, but the political situation was deteriorating rapidly. "They'd brought their ceremonial dreadnought," noted Admiral Helena Reyes, gesturing toward the largest council vessel. "The enlightened harmony. It's typically reserved for first contact scenarios or major diplomatic events. Is that significant? Ilara asked. Very, Rice replied. The Council is escalating this from a regulatory dispute to a galactic incident. They're making a statement about Earth's place in the order they've established. Lieutenant Commander Vasco, the Admiral's intelligence officer, approached with a data tablet. Admiral, we've intercepted Council communications. They're convening an emergency session. Multiple species are calling for sanctions against both Earth and the Nilari. Rice accepted the tablet, her expression hardening as she reviewed the information. They're implementing a blockade protocol. No ships in or out of this system without Council approval. Ilara's outer membrane pulsed with anxiety. What does this mean for the recovery operation? It means, Rice said grimly, that the Council is willing to let your people suffer longer to prove a point about their authority. A human officer rushed into the command center. Admiral, new contacts detected. Multiple vessels dropping out of FTL at the system periphery. The tactical display updated immediately. Dozens of new signatures appeared, not the elegant designs of Council ships, but something else entirely. Angular, predatory vessels with energy signatures unlike anything in the command center's database. Unknown configuration, reported the sensor officer. No match with any recognized species. A cold silence fell over the command center. Even the humans, usually so confident, seemed taken aback. Open a channel to the Council fleet, Rice ordered. Priority signal. The face of High Counselor Drex appeared on screen, his expression one of practiced diplomatic superiority. Admiral Rice, the Council has determined that. New contacts, Counselor, Rice interrupted. Unidentified vessels entering the system. Are they yours? Drex's expression shifted subtly. We are aware of the new arrivals. They are not Council vessels, but the situation is under control. The Nilari system falls under Council protection, and we will handle any complications. The connection terminated before Rice could respond. They know something, Vasco said quietly. The Council recognizes those ships. Ilara moved closer to the tactical display, studying the unknown vessels. Their formation, it's a harvesting pattern. I've seen historical records of this. All eyes turned to her. The Void Harvesters, she continued, voice trembling. They're thought to be myth, stories to frighten children. They appear, strip worlds of all valuable resources, including sentient life, and vanish back into deep space. Not myths, Rice said grimly. The Council knows exactly what these are. But why wouldn't they warn us? Asked one of the human officers. Ilara's outer membrane rippled with bitter understanding. Because the Council never intended to save us. They quarantined our system not to protect others from the nanite contamination, but to contain these harvesters once they arrived. Our world was designated as bait. The implications settled heavily over the command center. The Council had known the harvesters were coming. They had withdrawn aid and implemented quarantine not to prevent contamination spread, but to create a controlled sacrifice, one dying world to protect the rest of their territory. Admiral Rice's expression transformed into something that made even her fellow humans step back. Her voice, when she spoke, carried a quiet intensity that seemed to lower the temperature in the room. Lieutenant Commander Vasco, send a message to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Request immediate deployment of the 1st and 3rd Strike Fleets with full complement. Authorization raise Omega-7. She turned to Ilara. Commander, I need to know everything about these harvesters. Anything from your historical records, myths, children's stories, whatever you have. Admiral, one of the human officers interjected. The Council blockade. The Council just sacrificed an entire civilization. Rice cut in. Their blockade is irrelevant now. The tactical display updated again. The harvester vessels had accelerated, bypassing the Council ships completely as if they weren't even there. Their target was clear, the vulnerable Nilari homeworld. They're launching collection vessels, reported the sensor officer. Estimate planetary contact in 6 hours. Rice turned to her staff. Deploy all combat vessels. Form defensive perimeter around the Nylari homeworld. All medical and evacuation ships to fall back to secondary positions. She faced Ilara directly. Commander, your people need to prepare for ground combat. These harvesters, do they deploy ground forces? Ilara's appendages trembled. The stories speak of collector units, autonomous machines that gather organic material for processing, harvesting civilians. Rise translated grimly. Not today, they don't. Within hours, human ships had formed a defensive shell around the Nylari homeworld. Marines in powered combat armor deployed to major population centers, distributing weapons and training civilians in basic defense tactics. The remaining council representatives had withdrawn to the edge of the system, maintaining their blockade while carefully avoiding any engagement with the approaching harvesters. Ilara found herself in the field command post with Colonel Zhang, the human ground force commander. The colonel was distributing simple but effective weapons to Nylari civilians. These are kinetic pulse rifles, Zhang explained. Point and shoot. They're designed to disrupt synthetic systems. How did you develop weapons specifically effective against the harvesters? Ilara asked. Zhang gave her a look that somehow conveyed both amusement and grimness. We didn't. These are our standard anti-synthetic weapons. Earth learned long ago to prepare for every type of threat. Your species is remarkably prepared for conflict, Ilara observed. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. Zhang replied simply. When everything is trying to kill you, you either get very good at staying alive, or you don't stay anything at all. The first harvester collection vessels breached atmosphere 3 hours later, massive, silent craft that descended toward the largest Nylari population centers. They encountered something they clearly hadn't expected: organized resistance. Some collection vessels made it through the defensive screen. They disgorged autonomous harvesting units, spindly, multi-limbed machines that moved with cold efficiency toward population centers. They met human Marines in powered armor, supported by armed Nylari civilians. The battle was brief but intense. The harvesters, programmed to collect unresisting civilians, found themselves confronted with organized military units using weapons specifically designed to disrupt their systems. For every Marine that fell, dozens of harvester units were destroyed. In orbit, the human fleet engaged the main harvester vessels. Earth ships, designed for combat rather than ceremonial display, demonstrated capabilities that shocked even their allies. They fought with a coordination and ferocity that seemed to confuse the harvesters, whose tactics relied on overwhelming defenseless worlds. Admiral, called the tactical officer aboard Reyes' flagship, the harvesters are regrouping. They appear to be concentrating their forces for a massed assault on our weakest point. Reyes smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Exactly as predicted. Execute Operation Guillotine. Throughout the system, concealed human vessels suddenly powered up. They had been hidden in asteroid fields, behind moons, their signatures masked by specialized technology. Now they revealed themselves, directly behind a massing harvester fleet. The track closed with mechanical precision. Caught between two human battle groups, the harvesters found themselves in a crossfire they couldn't escape. The harvesters are attempting to retreat, reported the tactical officer. Multiple vessels charging FTL drives. Disable their drive systems, Rise ordered. We need prisoners for interrogation. On the surface, Colonel Zhang received the update with grim satisfaction. The harvesters are breaking orbit. Remaining ground units have lost coordination. Ilara watched as human Marines systematically eliminated the last harvester collection units. Her people were emerging from shelters, looking to the skies with expressions of hope rather than fear. Your species, she said quietly to Zhang, is terrifying. The colonel looked at her with surprise. We just saved your world. Yes, Ilara agreed. And you did it with such efficiency. As if you've been fighting wars like this for your entire history. Zhang was silent for a moment. Not like this, specifically, But humanity has been fighting something our entire existence: the environment, predators, disease, each other. We learned long ago that survival sometimes requires fighting back. 3 days later, representatives from Earth, the Nylari government, and the Galactic Council met aboard the UEDF flagship. The atmosphere was tense. High Counselor Drex spoke first, his tone conciliatory but cold. The Council acknowledges Earth's assistance in the Harvester incursion. However, the deployment of military forces outside your designated sector remains a violation of. Let's dispense with the diplomatic fiction, Counselor, Admiral Reyes interrupted. Your council sacrificed the Nylari to the Harvesters, a controlled burn to protect your core worlds. Drex's expression didn't change. The council must make difficult decisions for the greater good. Ilara cut in, her voice vibrating with barely contained fury. My people were deemed expendable without consultation or warning. Billions of lives discarded. The Admiral placed a data tablet on the table. We've interrogated the captured Harvester command units. They'd been operating in this galaxy for over 300 years. Their targeting patterns exactly match the worlds the Council has regrettably abandoned to various crises. She leaned forward. The Council has been feeding the Harvesters' peripheral worlds to keep them away from your core systems. How many civilizations have you sacrificed? Drex's composure finally cracked. What would you have us do? The Harvesters cannot be stopped, only directed. We salvage what we can, preserve the major civilizations. They can be stopped, Reyes said flatly. We just demonstrated that. The Harvesters prey on undefended worlds because they've never faced organized military response. Until now. She activated a holographic display showing the locations of known Harvester vessels. Earth is establishing a defense initiative. Any world that wishes to join will receive protection and military training. The era of sacrificing expendable populations is over. The Council will not permit. Drex began. The Council, Reyes said quietly, has lost the moral authority to determine what is permitted. Earth obstructed your blockade. Earth defeated the Harvesters you couldn't. And now Earth is offering protection to worlds you abandoned. She looked directly at the High Counselor. You can fight us on this and lose, or you can join us and help build something better. Your choice. In the weeks that followed, the Nylari homeworld began to heal. The atmospheric processors completed their work, and the planet's natural systems started to recover. But the political landscape of the galaxy had shifted irrevocably. Dozens of worlds, learning of Earth's stand against both the Council and the Harvesters, reached out through newly established channels. Species that had existed on the periphery of galactic society, always vulnerable to being deemed expendable, saw in humanity something they desperately needed. Allies who would fight rather than sacrifice. The Galactic Council, faced with a growing coalition of Earth-aligned worlds, reluctantly agreed to reforms. For the first time in millennia, the Council expanded to include representatives from previously marginalized species. Ilara found Admiral Reyes on the observation deck of the orbital station, looking down at the recovering world below. My people have a saying, Ilara said. Through darkest night, new stars are born. Reyes smiled. We have a similar one. Necessity is the mother of invention. Your people invented a new galactic order in weeks, Ilara observed. No, Reyes corrected gently. We just showed that another way was possible. Everyone who was tired of the old order did the rest themselves. Below them, the Nylari world shone blue-green once more, its wounded atmosphere healing. Above, the stars glittered with new possibility, and the promise that when the weak called for help, the Deathworlders would answer. Not with pity or token aid, but with a fleet.